Welcome to GTM Confessions, where we share what it takes to be a go-to-market professional today. Because it's freaking hard and it's far from the glamorous picture that social media often paints. Consider this show your weekly go-to-market therapy session. I'm your host, Stephanie Cox. I have more than 20 years of experience and I've done almost everything go-to-market related in my career. In this episode, I chat with Connie Glover about the impossible expectations of marketing in SaaS, what marketing really needs to deliver to sales, why leads are worthless, and so much more. Welcome to the show, Connie.
I can't believe we're doing this again. It's so exciting.
I know. I'm super excited to talk to you today about all things marketing, what it's like to work in software, what it's like to get sales, marketing, CX, product aligned, what it's like to work with CEOs. So maybe let's take a kind of like level set and think about how you would best describe marketing's role in a software company.
Kind of depends on who you ask, right? And I think we're going to get into that like in more detail. But in a software company, I believe that marketing's role is to create the demand for the product, raise the awareness, generate excitement, be everywhere, establish yourselves as a player in whatever space that you're in, and make it easy for sales to then get more opportunities and close more deals faster. However, I loved your recent post on LinkedIn about how it is not marketing's job to generate the pipeline and create the pipeline. And I think I'm going to probably keep going back to that as we move through our conversation today.
Yeah, that was definitely a hot take. I know not everyone agrees with that.
That's why I said it depends on who you ask.
It does. So let's maybe start there, because I think that is one of the biggest challenges for marketers today is this misalignment or misconception about what marketing is actually supposed to do. So maybe let's start with like the CEO. You and I have both worked for numerous CEOs in the past. Yes. How would you describe what they think marketing's job is generally?
I feel like it's similar to what I feel like the board's expectations are as well. And sometimes the board and the CEO's expectations are right in alignment. And I still feel like in spite of how marketing has evolved over recent years, and it's evolved very quickly, in spite of how it's evolved into what marketing feels like today, I still feel like at the CEO level, maybe even at the board member level, maybe even at the sales level, but we'll attack that on a different talk track. But I still feel like their expectation is surrounding the stuff that they see. Okay? So marketing is about the stuff that you see. The logo, the branding, the website, the trade show booth, that sort of thing. Maybe even social media posts. But what used to be marketing's role in terms of the stuff that you see, maybe 90 to 95%. Now, the stuff you see, 10% of what we actually do. Which is why I still think that anybody that thinks about marketing, maybe even still thinks of marketing in terms of like how it kind of equates to advertising, which is so not these days. That's where sort of the disconnect starts, I believe.
No, I completely agree. I can't tell you how many times I have conversations with CEOs or board members in the past. They're like, what if the hero on the website said this? And I'm like, when did you become a website expert? When did you become a messaging expert? I know that your friends saw this.
Where the board members have gone down that rabbit hole. I'm like, you guys are way bigger than figuring out the bullet points for the hero section, right?
Correct. Well, and I think it's to your point, it's like that's what they see. They don't realize hey, there's been a ton of testing that's happened to get to the messaging that we have. We've probably iterated on that hero image and A/B tested that a bazillion times. There's a reason it is what it is. Happy to explain that to you. But just because like you now think it should be something different, unless you were a marketing expert, that is just an opinion, right? That's not based necessarily in anything else. I think that is like the challenge today is especially, and I've been a marketing leader, I've also been a CEO, and I've tried not to do this, but it is hard because when you're in that seat, you often go, your first job is to grow the business as quickly as possible. How do you make that happen?
Right.
And you kind of, as much as like as a marketing leader, I tried not to have shiny object syndrome. When you become a CEO, it's like there are more shiny objects and more people telling you and chirping to you about the shiny objects. So there have been times where I'm like, hi, I saw like I know a competitor's doing this. And then I'd like have to like hit my hand, like, no, Stephanie, don't do that. Like, don't be bad. Don't push them down a path of chase a shiny object because I saw someone else doing it. But I
You
think
should know
that's,
better, Stephanie, because you
I
sat in
know.
the seat.
I've been the one it was done to, and then when I would catch myself trying to do it to someone else, I'd be like, don't do it. Or like just share it, but don't like have an expectation that we start doing that immediately. And I think that has been like part of the challenge because you want to grow and you don't want to leave any rock uncovered when you're like as a CEO or as a board member. But a lot of those don't, you think you're being helpful when you're passing it along to marketing because everyone feels like for whatever reason they can give their opinions and feedback to marketing on everything, unlike any other functional area. But I don't think what they realize is they're like missiles being launched at marketing.
Yes.
It's like, wham, why aren't you doing this? This is wrong. This is wrong. Also, why are we not doing?
We need to be doing this. My favorite phrase, we need to be doing this. So define need and define like the urgency of that need. So I always refer to it as the flyby. So I'll be working along dedicated to my plan and our strategy and everything that's in place and the roadmap. And then there's the flyby. We need to do this. We right now need to do this. I found this. I listened to this on a podcast. I saw this on a competitor. I read this online. And we need to do this right now. And then I'm going, wait, what? So let's take a breath. So when you say need, is that like need that we need to talk about this and see where it fits into the roadmap? Is this like need that this is an immediate initiative that you think we need to implement now? If so, why? And if so, what is this now as in now today or now tomorrow? And then you kind of, it's a challenge with marketers, marketing leaders these days, the managing kind of up, because there's two things to that. You want to have the ultimate respect for the CEO, especially when they were also the founder. It was their idea. They're entrepreneurs. They've started a business. They're trying to grow their business for a reason. They were the idea guy or gal in the first place, right? You want to have the respect for that and the respect that because it's their baby and they should be able to implement any idea that they want. But they also need to respect our position and that in order for us to help them achieve their vision and their goals for their company, we have to be able to keep everything on track. Because if we're only ever functioning in reactive mode, which is how it could so easily get to, then nothing will move forward. We will never gain momentum. It will always be 3 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Completely agree. That's why I did this as a marketing leader. And then I started telling marketers that worked for me when I was CEO the same thing. When I give you one of those flybys, because I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because not because I necessarily say that you need to do it now, but I want you to be aware that I saw something that might be of interest or of help, right? All you have to say to me is, thanks, I'll look into that. And then, hey, at some point, this was super helpful. If it's super dumb, you don't need to tell me if you don't think it's worthwhile. Or if you feel like I was really excited about it and you need to provide like a reason why you think it won't work, like a 2-sentence Slack is totally fine. But I think what sometimes marketers fail to realize, and I didn't realize this until I became a CEO, is when we do those like missiles and flybys to marketing especially, we forget about them a lot faster than I think marketing realizes, right? Like
So
we've moved on.
yeah, no, I kind of have this little rule in my head. I don't want to say this publicly because then any CEO that I work for, including my current one, then I'll be found out. But I give it like the 3-time rule. So if I get the flyby, I make note. Sometimes they're good ideas. So if it's a good idea, then I'll actually take bigger note. But I'll take note. I'll wait and see if it comes up again. Because if it comes up again or even a 3rd time, then I know that I need to address it and really take it more seriously and really see where maybe we can make it fit. So I rarely react because, again, that you go down the reaction rabbit hole, you're done for. So I rarely react, and I've gotten a lot better about it because it's so easy, especially when you report directly to the CEO, especially when they're the founder. Everybody in the company feels like if the CEO says it, then that makes it the priority. And so I've had to do a lot of like internal management where if the CEO gives an initiative directly to somebody on the team, they're going to do it because he or she said, right? And then I have to ask their help and say, listen, when you do that, they're going to move everything else to the back of the line. So can you help me explain that we're in sync and that we've already figured out where it fits in the roadmap and how to prioritize it, and just because you say it doesn't make it first place in line? And so usually they're pretty good about that. Like the CEOs just want to they want to be heard, they want to get their idea out there, and then it's our job to decide how, if it will work, and when and where.
I think that is the most important point. It's right. I think CEOs want to get ideas out there, want to share things, but they expect their team to decide if and when it'll work and how to do it and whether or not to do it.
People, I don't know why people are nervous about CEOs, because I rarely have, I don't know that I've ever worked for like a mean one. I mean, but I
I'm sure
think
they
it's just
exist.
because it's like, oh my gosh, they said it, I have to do it. It's not like somebody's going to get fired or for asking or, but you never know. It's not for me to speak to everybody else on the team.
Well, I think part of it, at least from my perspective, has always been that because, especially when the CEO is the founder and it's their vision, they know best. And I think that is true in regards to the probably strategic long-term vision of the company. But if they knew best about every functional area, they wouldn't hire the caliber of team that they do, right? They wouldn't hire strategists and leaders, they would hire just executioners. And I think that's the big difference, right? Like they hire people like yourself because you're immensely talented and they want you to figure out what to do.
And that's exactly right. And it's a good point. And I've been in more than one situation where they started with the executioners. And all it was a reaction game. And there was no rhyme or reason or plan or strategy or momentum or one thing being in sync with another or clarity at all. It was always just running around checking the box. And when you step into a role where you're taking over for that type of function, it is a billion times, I'm going to say maybe a trillion times harder than starting with a startup where you're the marketing leader from the beginning, when you have to undo because it becomes a culture. The reaction, taking orders, checking the box, only thinking up to the next task that somebody gave you. And to undo that type of like mindset, that's the hardest. It's been the hardest part of my job when I've had to be in that situation. And then I start getting nervous because I feel like then board members, CEOs, whoever at the top is like, what are you doing here? Like, are you doing anything? And I am, but at the same time, I also have to like turn a very big ship around and get into the mode where everybody's then working according to the bigger picture, the overall strategy, where they contribute to that, and thinking past the box checking mentality. And so that then when they get one of the flybys on this down low that we don't know about in marketing, then they know to go, okay, so we're working on this right now. This is the priority for this. I just got an initiative from the CEO. What do I do with this? And then we talk about it. You get them to that point, and that's the first major hurdle to overcome in that situation.
Well, speaking of hurdles, let's talk about sales. Another fun
Speaking of
hurdle.
hurdles.
Speaking of hurdles. So obviously we've talked about CEOs and board members and the misconceptions they have about marketing. What would you say are the biggest misconceptions sales has about marketing today and the role it's supposed to play?
Okay, so that, I'm not going to make any friends on my answer here. Everybody that's my current follower and connection, please don't hate me if you're in sales. I feel like it has changed dramatically and recently. So I've been at this game a long time, and I've been in sales, and I've been a sales leader before being a marketing leader. So I get it about sales. And I was in sales when we had to work from no digital tools and find my own leads and opportunities and be 100% responsible for my own pipeline and my quotas or goals or whatever they were called and the timelines. Like 100%. There were no BDRs, there were no appointment setters, there were no MQLs, right? We got to talk about that because that's like MQLs are like a 4-letter word for me. But anyway, so back then, if you grew up in sales before maybe the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you get that, right? Somehow along the way, marketing has evolved from the what you see people to the responsible for 90% of the pipeline people. I don't know how that happened. I don't know where it happened. I was in it while it was happening. It was like the slow motion bad dream where it's like, I can't be responsible for making sure that you close your deal. I can't get the lead, make sure it's the right opportunity, make sure I nurture it and work it to the point where then you go in and ink the deal and then the sale happened. It's too much. It's a lot. And somehow it's gotten there. How did we get here? I don't know. I just recently had this conversation, and I feel like now the expectation of sales, not their fault. I'm not faulting them. I would love to sit back and go, yeah, not a good lead. I need something better. And then get it to where it's to the point where the only answer left is yes, where do I sign? And then they finish the deal. So I know that sales and account executives, I know they work very hard. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I feel like from where I sit, that expectation has become more and more and more dependent on marketing owning so much more of the pipeline in the sales process. And now I feel like I'm almost doing 2 jobs. And then I feel like as a result of that, that's why marketing is now morphed into the RevOps title. And now it's all about that kind of data related to the pipeline. And now it's called RevOps. So now marketing's gotten really murky, right? And how it's perceived from the sales, the revenue sort of point of view.
Well, it's interesting when you're talking about like early in your career, for those of you that are younger than Connie and I, back in the day, like when I started out, people would call from Yellow Pages. They were
Yellow
for
Pages.
those Yellow Pages for people though, phone books. Those were things that they would print that were thousands of pages where they had every phone number, landlines, and you would call from them and you would send out letters. Like you
Letters.
would print letters and we would, I remember one of my first couple jobs, like I would stuff thousands of letters at home at night for marketing stuff because that's how sales
And
worked.
you're sending the brochure
Yes,
that
like
marketing
physically
created.
printing. Uh-huh. And they were expensive.
And they were expensive.
All those things. And I think now it's interesting. I don't know how we got here, but it does feel it's kind of like when they say if a frog jumps into a pot of boiling water, he'll jump out immediately. But if you put the frog in the boiling water and you slowly raise it, the temperature, he'll boil himself to death and not know. I feel like that's what's happened. Right? Like if any of us like started out our career and we're being told you're responsible from everything from like the first time someone hears about you until, when sales wants to actually work the deal because it's been qualified by 20 different things. I would be like, thank you. No, hard no. That's a pass.
Yeah, exactly. But yet
But
here we are.
and we've been in it. So it's like the slow death of creativity, of the ability to actually like impact the business. And if I hear, I'm not going to make any friends with this comment. If I hear one more time someone tell me that that is not worth an AE's time, I'm going to lose it because I hear that so much.
Right. So tell me this, because I'm not functioning in this mode right now in terms of all the acronyms. So is it still a thing about measuring MQLs, SQLs, all the way down, or is it just like this is either a good opportunity or it's not? And then I want to tell you what another consequence is of where we're at right now.
So I think it depends on the company. I think there's a lot of companies that talk about MQLs, SQLs, and I hope that terminology goes somewhere to die because I think it's the biggest crap in the entire world.
Same.
I think I think at the end of the day, what sales wants is to, and this is my opinion, is to have hand raisers. I don't think sales wants to talk to people who downloaded your ebook. I don't think they care if their badge was scanned. I think they want to talk to people who, if you're selling software, requested a demo. Because here's the thing. If someone requests a demo and they fit within your ICP, a good AE is going to want that opportunity.
Yes.
And I personally think it's a crock of crap, or crock of shit is probably a stronger word for it. When then you have to talk to like a BDR and SDR after you request a demo to then be able to be qualified in order to speak to an AE. No, I requested a demo. If I don't get to book a demo on your website, I've already went to your competitor and booked a demo with them. I'm speaking to them and now you're behind. So that's what I feel like marketing's job, in my opinion, should be to create brand awareness.
Yes.
Right. And to make the brand seem like it's everywhere, that people know what the product does. They know why they would be interested in how it could help them. And when they are in market, right? So I think that's like an important thing that people forget. 95% of your target market is not in market looking to buy a solution right now. It's only like 5% if you're lucky. So when that 5%, when they enter that 5% and they raise their hand, like that's when they go to sales. And everything else should be brand awareness, which there's a lot of things we can do with that. But that's why building a brand is so important, because if you build a brand, then you create demand when they're in market. You can't create demand. And I think this is the fundamental flaw that CEOs, board members, and some sales leaders have. I can't create demand from people who are not looking to buy. Like there's nothing I can do from a marketing perspective to get someone to go, you know what? I wasn't thinking about buying, let's talk about podcast recording software. I wasn't going to buy that, but you know what? Your ad was so great. Now I decided I should buy that today. No one does that. No one. Yeah. So I think that's like the fundamental difference that needs to start to happen.
Exactly. And so here's the danger of measuring all of those like leads. Right? As marketers, then, we're under pressure to have to spend a lot of money, right? When you're creating demand, awareness, excitement, like who else is doing this? This has got to be something. I've heard this person speak from this company. I've seen who they're associated with. I've loved their stuff. They're everywhere. I've seen them at, whatever. But if it's about generating leads and providing somebody the list to work that we just established nobody wants, we're then under a lot of pressure to look for ways to do that. And those ways are limited and they cost a lot of money. And when you're in a startup mode, especially, you're also tasked with doing the most that you can with the least amount of money, right? So let's talk about trade shows.
It's a love-hate relationship with trade shows.
Let's talk about how unbelievably expensive it is to go exhibit at a show. Okay, just exhibit. A lot of shows now, you can't just go exhibit. You have to be a sponsor of some level, right? Which is in addition to the cost of this and that. Like you want to talk about the monetization of trade shows. So what used to be a great way to go in and gauge the pulse of the market, talk directly with people one-on-one, see how you're being perceived, see what your competitors are doing, and come back with kind of a viable bunch of people that you can then follow up with, has now become this like money grab, for one. And then for two, just because they walked by your booth and you scanned them, to your point, doesn't mean that you can then hand that over to sales and go, oh yeah, they came to our booth. And then expect that they're going to call and even if you then nurture, and even if you then, so then what you're paying for, and you get the list, okay, that's fine. But to your point, did that mean that they're ready to buy your product right now just because they were in general at this show? And then you've spent a lot of money. And then what do you really have to show for it, even if the list is long? That's just one example, right? Another example is email nurturing. Okay, you kind of feel like you have to do it. How else are you going to kind of stay top of mind? Are people even seeing those emails? There's so many ways now that you can avoid getting that stuff in your inbox that you don't know if it's a bot causing your open rate to be fine or what's happening, but you don't want to then not do it. The best case scenario, I had one in like the last 3 months of a nurture sequence where somebody actually came to us from one of my emails from a nurture sequence, and the deal actually got closed. But that's one, right? And then you can't use like a free email distribution platform anymore. Now that's all monetized, and the more that you want to do with email marketing and other types of, that type of communication and distribution costs more and more and more. So everything that we used to kind of be able to do that would A, get you pretty good results, and B, you could do for pretty reasonably and manage your budget. Now it's like, man, I don't know if it's going to be worth the money. And then on the other hand, you can't not do it. Possible if it doesn't work out. It's like, we call it the leads were shitty. And it's like, and it costs us 50 grand. And then it's on marketing. So that goes back to the marketing having to own all of that, right? So.
Well, and don't forget, marketing is the first budget to get cut when we need to make cuts.
Yeah. Well,
but the responsibilities never get taken away. Expectations are the same.
The expectations are the same. Yeah. Well, we're the ones that spend the most money. We have to. We don't have a choice anymore. I was doing PR back in the days when freepressrelease.com meant that you could go distribute a press release for free. Did you get an image? Maybe not, but you could still get it out on the airwaves. Now you're buying a very big ticket item subscription to PR Web or one of those other platforms. It is nowhere near free. There's no free. And not only is it not free, it is very expensive. And everybody there's probably a billion press releases getting sent out through those channels a day. Nobody's seeing it. Nobody cares anyway. It's not helping your SEO. It's not helping your backlinks. So do you do it? Do you not? Do you feel like, oh, we have to, that's another one of those, what you see things as an expectation. We need to do a press release. We need to do a press release. And it's like, do we? Because here's how much it's going to cost. And here's what's going to happen as a result. So what do you do?
What do you do? I think that's the hard part. And I think that's where it comes back to like how marketing and sales have to work together. And for me, it's always about, and in a perfect world, I'll probably get hate for this too, but it is what it is. In a perfect world, companies should be investing more in marketing in terms of the financial spend and the team members than they should be in sales. And I know that it goes contrary to like what every single SaaS startup scale up.
The expectations have changed to what they are right now.
Right. Well, and I think it's also the sales process has changed. And what I mean by that is like you had, back, especially pre-COVID, there were times where you had to get on a plane, you had to go talk to people. Being in person was important. And in some industries, that is still very, very true. But in software, for the most part, yes, for large scale enterprise deals, it can be helpful. But I've closed personally enterprise deals that have been large and never been in person. And it's been all over Zoom. And I think that's possible. And so I think in reality, if we stop as marketers passing shitty leads and we stop calling them leads and that dies and MQLs die and SQLs die and all the things die.
And we bury them and have a very nice ceremony and send them off.
And we do. And we don't speak of them again. But if we start passing only hand raisers or whatever new fun word we want to call them to sales, you need less salespeople because they're only getting people who are actually in the market to buy, who said they're interested. And those are deals, one, they want to work. Two, they have a higher possibility of winning. And I think it makes the relationship between sales and marketing so much better. There's nothing more frustrating.
Is way faster.
Exactly.
Here's who you have to get on board though. CEO, board members, because then they're like, oh my God, where's our leads? Where's our then it's the volume game. And it's
I hate the volume game.
You have to shift that mindset to wouldn't you rather have 80% of your effort and 80% of your sales, right? And if I gave you 1,000 leads, and you spend all of your time trying to sift out who's actually interested, wouldn't you rather time well spent working the ones that matter? Okay. Well, tell me this then, Stephanie, because I've not worked in a product-led growth PLG model. Okay.
Yeah.
And you have. So then at what point is that mean everything's going to become PLG? Right.
So I have a hot take on that. Here's what I would, yeah. So I actually talked to Wes Bush, who for me is one of the best PLG experts that exist about this. And I really believe that fundamentally a large number of software companies should have PLG as either their primary or only go-to-market strategy. So PLG to me is a go-to-market strategy. It requires a fundamental change in your business, your culture. The CEO has to be the one leading the initiative in order for it to be successful. I do think in companies, especially that sell into the enterprise. So if you do have an enterprise solution, I think you need PLG, and I think you also need a sales team. And I think they work in tandem. And the reason why I say that is in the enterprise, you are going to have people who want to try it before they buy it. And they're going to evaluate things at 10 p.m. at night when they're looking at solutions. And then they're going to, because of their security needs, because of their, purchasing needs, things like that, they're going to need to go through a more standard kind of sales process once they've whittled down who the vendors are that they want to actually talk to. And so I do think there is that kind of hybrid approach that exists for companies that are selling into, Fortune 500 businesses. And I think also some of those companies are going to want to request a demo. They're not going to want to necessarily go through the product-led experience, especially if they're going to be more senior. You're not going to get a VP at an enterprise organization to create a free account and try and figure that out. You're going to get someone who's multiple layers down below them, who's actually going to be your user to do that. So I do think there is like a world where there are companies that are only PLG. And I think there's a world where there's this hybrid approach where you have kind of both offerings and they work in tandem together. I think the thing about it is in kind of that like hybrid option, and what I would suggest for companies that aren't PLG today that are just sales led is, you still have to pass people to sales that want to buy. Like when people are like, we need more leads, all I'm like, well, I can give you, you can go buy a list of email addresses. That's really what you're asking.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that you're going to put them in some sort of cadence and you're going to send them a bunch of emails and they're not going to convert and they're going to have a negative first impression of you. Why would you do that? Marketing should be all about looking at like a really tight ICP, a really tight TAM, who are the accounts, who are the people within those, and actually marketing to them. So when they're in market and considering solutions, they're raising their hand because they remember what you've done. And there's a lot of creative ways to do that across a variety of channels. But it's not just like getting that list, sending them a couple of, emails via and I love how we like skirt the laws as marketers. And this is why I think MarTech regulations exist, is because marketers got new technology and did really bad things. And the government was like, no, stop. So it's kind of like, does engaging with automated sales nurturer tracks that marketing typically runs, are those subject to canned spam or are they not? Because they're technically one-on-one. Let's be honest, they're not. We're just like sending them one-on-one, but technically like they're going to a lot of people. And it's the same generic message. And I'm sure there are some instances where that works, but I would tell you after a long time of doing this, the reality is those people aren't going to convert, to your point, a ton. They're not raising their hands. And they're probably getting a negative impression of you because all you're doing is, when you get in that hamster wheel, is sending more emails, doing more of these reactive things to generate more leads that you can pass to sales. So then sales can come back and tell you, well, those were shitty. Can we have better ones? And you're like, but you want more.
Pick one. Do you want more leads or do you want quality? Because you
good
can't have
lead.
both. You want good
You can't
leads.
have both, right? It's like cheap, fast, and easy. You can't have all the things. You can't have high quality people who are ready to buy and then ask for more of them. And the reason they're asking for more is because we have sales teams that are so large based on this idea of, hey, we need X number of leads and opportunities to work to close at this rate in order to generate this much revenue, right? Like that's how sales teams are built. If we said instead, hey, you know what? Our win rate's not going to be 20% or 30%. Our win rate's going to be 60% because we're only going to work stuff of people who are in market. Spoiler alert, you need less salespeople, right? And you hire closers who are exceptionally good at working active opportunities and closing a deal. That to me is where like the role sales should play and how the two teams should work together. And we stopped talking about leads. Sales never gets leads. Sales gets people who raise their hand, and leads go to die.
Yeah. I thought it was great in your episode with Jillian, and she was so proud of this big milestone. How did you hear about us? Because you're everywhere. We heard about you everywhere, right? That's like the epitome of demand gen. And I've had that experience as well. And it's the best feeling in the world because you feel like, oh my gosh, we're actually helping sales close more deals faster. Like that's my goal in marketing. Sales is my customer. As much as we might agree to disagree, butt heads, have different expectations, whatever, in the end, sales is still my customer, right? So if I can make it easier for them to close more deals faster, I feel like I'm doing my job. What it takes to do that these days is a monumental task. So to get that kind of reaction from a hand raiser, I can see why she was so excited. I've had the same feeling once in my life. and because it's happened, now I feel like if it doesn't happen every time, I feel like a failure. But it's very, very, very difficult, and it's difficult to figure it out. And I think where, just to kind of go back full circle to the very first part of our conversation, the expectation for the speed at which that needs to happen, especially in a startup or somebody new, go-to-market mode, it doesn't compute. The expectation for speed does not equate with the effort that it takes behind the scenes in marketing of all the stuff that you can't see to get to that point. And it is scary. It is scary when there's a board full of people that have invested money. An advisory board is a different animal because they don't have skin in the game technically. But for those that have money invested, or if it's the founder that has all of his money invested, the expectation for the speed of that happening is stressful.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't happen fast.
It doesn't happen fast. And I think, but
Unless you have
and
a
that's,
lot of money, and most of us don't, to invest
but
in
even
that.
if you do, it doesn't, I don't think it happens fast. I think that's the problem is even these success stories that you see blow up overnight,
Yeah, the
what ends
$50
up
million
happening,
whatever.
but they don't actually like blow up overnight. Like there's been a lot of stuff that's happened before that, before they became successful. I think the other thing is, and this is what I would tell every single startup CEO, founder, till I am blue in the face, which is your first hire after you have a product, after you have something to sell, should be a marketer. It should not be a salesperson. You need to do founder-led sales. You need to be the salesperson for a very long time because you will not be successful bringing in an AE to sell until you've sold 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 customers, depending on your ACV, yourself. You need to have 3 AEs that are constantly hitting quota before you bring in a sales leader. And in order for any of them to be successful, marketing has to be up and running and building brand for you. And I think that's one thing. We've talked about like demand gen and lead gen, but one of the things that came up in this conversation is why do we call it demand gen? We're not creating demand. We're really not. We're creating brand awareness. I mean, we're building a brand that then people recognize, and when they're in market, they raise their hand. Because just thinking about this after talking with you, Connie, like when we keep saying like demand gen, I'm like, go create more. I can't create more. I can't make more people ready to buy. I can make people more aware of us, but I cannot make more people ready to buy today.
And with that awareness is the awareness of why they would buy from us when they're ready. Like we're all aware of our 800-pound gorilla competitors. And you enter into a space, unless you're creating the space, right? Unless you are creating the space, which is the ultimate, to me, that would be my ultimate job. I don't care about my title or my salary or anything else about my career. If I could go into a situation where we were creating the space and not entering into a space that's already owned by somebody else, that would be my dream job, right? Outside of being a dancer, but that dream job went away when I was 20. So anyway, that would be my dream job, because when you are entering into a space that's already owned by somebody else, to your point, you are not creating the demand. You're creating what we hope is a chance to get a conversation when we all know that the first person that they're going to go to is the, fill in the blank. So which again, it's hard because,
That's one of the things that I like around Wes Bush says this a lot around product-led growth, that you have to create moats. Like what makes you so unique from the competition that it's obvious that someone has to go with you. And I think that applies in product-led especially. I think it applies in a sales-led company. But what is so special about your product or your customer experience team and your customer success that makes it almost like stupid for someone not to go with you? as the option. And that's the only way that you can win. And one thing that I've seen happen a lot is there are companies that are coming into the space because it is getting more cost effective to build software solutions today. And they're offering, 75 to 80% of the functionality of the big 800-pound gorilla, and they're doing it for a fraction of the cost. And right now their moat is price. You don't get everything, but you get almost everything you need, and we're substantially less expensive. And that's causing them to win. And that is a strategy. But we've talked a lot about new logo acquisition, like a lot. So that's where everyone's focused. Why do you think that is? Why do we ignore our existing customer base?
I have so much to say about this, you might have to cut me off, or we may have to go to episode 2. So the basic answer to the question has been my same answer to 5 out of your 6 questions today. New logo acquisition is what people see, right? We closed this deal. We're adding this logo to our banner. Okay. They can see that. And they think that is still how they grow. So I learned all about the importance, that's too soft of a word, the criticality of having at least half of your business in retaining and growing your existing customer base. I've learned that in 2 different companies. When my very first SaaS company was in the automotive space, I worked for DealerTrack. That was back before they got acquired by Cox. And the business unit that we worked for, the woman I worked for, who was the head of marketing, Melissa Hendrick, who I've worked for several times, and she's a brilliant marketer. Shout out to Melissa. She made the product marketing team aware of our number 1 priority, and it was to reduce the churn in our business unit. It had the worst churn rate of all the business units. We had to fix it before we could even think about helping the salespeople get net new logos, because they were having a hard time. If they're losing customers at a faster pace and they're getting new customers, first of all, it makes their job twice as hard. For every customer you lose, you've got to get 2 new customers in order to have a net new logo, right? Second of all, how do they explain it? How do they explain to a potential new customer, oh, are you working with so-and-so? Well, we were until we sucked and then they left, right? Type of thing. So our number 1 priority was reversing the churn. And we did that in a dramatic manner. Once that ship was turned, we were then able to retain, then our retention rate was like amazing after that, because all of the effort that we had put into all of the initiatives we did in order to stop the churn also helped us to then retain our customer base. And then all the other sales and AE members from all of the other business units were then able to then cross-sell our products, and we were one of them, right? And it was amazing to watch, and that was before I think it kind of became like a buzzword. So then when I went to work for team support, fast forward years later, also with Melissa Hendrick, part of the product was a B2B customer support product. So we sold a software solution to companies that had B2C customer service to help them be better at their customer service. It was all about how you serve your customers, retain them, and then customer success is not only retention, it is growing that customer. What else can we do to grow the revenue that we're getting out of our existing customer? If a customer already loves you and you sell them a different solution or a new one or a complementary solution or something new that you've developed and launched, why isn't that every bit as big of a win as a net new logo? It's the same revenue-wise and so much easier and so much less expensive from a marketing budget standpoint. I feel like it is the most underutilized appreciated like function in sales, and it technically should be a sales function,
Well, that's an interesting. No, I was going to ask you, that's an
in my
interesting take.
opinion.
Do you think it should sit in sales or do you think it sits with customer success? I've seen it work both ways and I've seen it fail both ways.
I think it can work both ways, but I think if it falls under customer success and you are part of the customer success team, because that's how your organization is structured, that the customer success managers should have sales capabilities. Isn't that what you're doing?
Well, and that's, I think, what's interesting is sometimes when you give it to your customer success team, especially if they've not previously had it, they want to make customers happy. And so sometimes they want to give customers things for free, right? Which is not necessarily the ideal scenario. But then sometimes when the sales team is doing customer expansion, they then want to be like involved in every single aspect of the customer, which is also like problematic. So there's part of me that wonders if there's kind of a
Should it fall under marketing?
No, it should not fall under marketing.
Do I need to add something else to our plate?
Add it to the list.
I'm
You also
sorry, I
now
said
say
that out
expression
loud. Somebody's
revenue,
gonna think it's a good idea.
and it's going to happen.
It's gonna
No,
happen.
one of the things that I've seen be successful though is having a team that's specifically dedicated to customer expansion that sits in sales and works kind of like dotted line with customer success. And so they're kind of they work with a number of like CSMs and they're responsible for coming in like the CSM will identify the opportunity and then this person comes in and helps like run like the sales process to close that deal and to do the upgrade. And I think that can work out really nicely because those people are only chasing like expansion revenue. They're not also chasing new logos because oftentimes sales comp plans, if you are doing both, you get less commission typically on expansion revenue than you do on net new logos, which
And
is a
that's
separate
ridiculous.
problem.
Can I just say that's ridiculous, and that is a separate problem. And the incentive should be the same. It should also be the same, in my opinion, if a customer success person or team saves a customer that was going to leave, right? It should never get to the point if that function is functioning, because the first order of business is making sure that the first time that you're talking to existing customer is to try and talk them out of leaving. You should never be surprised by that, right? So the communication, the check-ins, the engagement, it's a whole separate, customer marketing is a whole separate marketing function, okay? And very, very important because you can use so much of that in your efforts for net new logo acquisition, okay? But you have to, because if you lose it, because again, you lose a customer, then sales has to get 2 net new logos. And then it should only count as 1.
So what would you say if someone is thinking about customer marketing and investing in it? How do they get the CEO, the board on board with that? And then where should they start? Because I think a lot of companies think they're doing customer marketing because they're sending out like release emails or like little updates or they're doing case studies.
A newsletter.
A newsletter, like what should it look like?
So I kind of feel, because what we did at DealerTrack was we started with those things, because the first thing that we noticed, and I know it seems kind of basic and maybe silly and maybe not even effective based on all the other stuff that we were just now bashing from the net new logo side of things. But the first thing that we figured out at DealerTrack when we started that reverse the churn initiative, right, was that we weren't talking to the customers. The customers didn't know what we were doing to innovate, what we were doing to fix glitches, what we were doing to create some new things that are going to make their life easier down the road. They didn't know. So we did actually start with basic customer communications, but it was in a very creative way. And I get to say that because it was my baby. I'll pat myself on the back. In a very creative and kind of engaging way, But again, I kind of feel like I could have done not something so great and something super basic because, oh my gosh, all of a sudden we're talking to our customers, right? So it can start there with just basic communications and how do you best kind of keep reinforcing with your customer why they are your customer and why they don't need to ever think about considering something else, somebody else that's new that comes into the space that's trying to get them to change, right? Why would they do that if you're always reinforcing why they're with you? And that you're continuing to stay, the big thing is that you're continuing to stay current and updated and that you hear them. We understand this is a glitch. We understand this is a shortcoming. We understand that this is something that needs to be better about our software. Guess what? We're working on it. Here's how, here's what you can expect it to be completed, and then when it is, and you tell them. Like, sometimes that's all they need to know. The other thing is, when it comes to the case studies, I call them customer success stories, whatever you want to do, everybody does them. There's some fantastic, even new platforms out there that do it really well and beautifully. I don't think the purpose of those, well, I take that back. Yes, the purpose of those is so that you've got social proof and that you've got other people that can say, yes, they're in my industry. These are the successes that you're having. I can do a whole other dissertation on how to do those correctly so that they're effective in terms of net new logo acquisition. But what it does when you do one of those case studies with your existing customer is that they are then doing the talking and they are reminding themselves and they are going out there and publicly saying, this is why I recommend this company and these are all of the ways that they've helped us. From a monetary standpoint, from a no more headache standpoint, from why I do business better standpoint. So they're saying it out loud, not only for you to tell the story, but to tell themselves and everybody in their organization. So once they say that, you think that person's ever going to leave? Right? So then that's a retention sort of. And then, oh my gosh, guess what? Because one of the things that I do when I'm interviewing somebody for a case study, customer success story, is I ask that question at the end. If you had a wish list about our product, or if you wish something worked better, or are we missing something that you wish we offered, or a functionality that is clunky, what is your wish list for us? Because it's so easy to go, oh, they're awesome. And then everybody writes, oh, 5-star reviews and, oh, they think we're awesome. And yes, yes, yes. Who cares? Everybody has customers that are going to say that. What can we do better? I don't mind including that with the story. I also love it when we take that information and go back and do something with it. And that helps us innovate. And that gives us ideas about how we can make our product better. And then we're like, we heard it from our customers. Now we've created this. And now, existing customers, guess what? And now, net new logo people, we offer this. And you can really, really, really use, if you do it right, use both plans, the net new logo acquisition marketing plan, the customer marketing plan, and have them like cross over. So when you're trying to convince, back to your question from 20 minutes ago, when you're trying to convince a CEO, a board, whatever, why you need to do customer marketing, you could play back this little speech that I just gave, or you can create 3 bullet points from that. And the big kicker, no money needed.
Just time. So last question. What is your biggest go-to-market confession?
My biggest go-to-market confession is that I'm afraid I'm running out of ideas. Because every idea seems to be, even if it's a good idea at the time, pretty quickly it's going to be everybody having that idea. And then what's my big next idea? To create the demand, to create the awareness, to break through the noise, to have our voice heard, to stand out against the 800-pound gorilla in the room, or all of them. Well, I keep, every time I have a new idea, I'm afraid it's going to be my last idea. That's my biggest confession and my biggest fear right now.
You've been listening to GTM Confessions. If you love what you've heard, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. And don't forget to tell a friend.